Now, in a change to our scheduled programme, here's Nick Clark with the BBC News Special.
Good afternoon. London has today suffered a concerted terrorist attack.
I think I assumed it was a bomb because it looked like it had blown from the inside out.
I was in the front carriage and people were severely injured there. But I've heard, and I don't know if it's right, that people were even worse further back.
We think there are about 6 explosions. One of them is on a bus. The others are connected to tube stations.
We have so far treated over 100 casualties. 10 of those are critical, 7 in a serious condition.
I want to begin by expressing on behalf of the whole country our sympathy for those injured and the friends and families of those who've died.
All of our countries have suffered from the impact of terrorism. Those responsible have no respect for human life.
We will not yield to these people. We will not yield to the terrorists.
It was aimed at ordinary working-class Londoners. It is just indiscriminate attempt at mass murder.
It is now known that there were 3 bombs on underground trains and a 4th on a bus during the morning rush hour. Precise numbers of casualties remain unclear, though in the past few minutes the Metropolitan Police at a press conference have said that 21 people died between King's Cross and Russell Square, 7 between Moorgate and Liverpool Street, and 5 at Edgware Road underground station. It's believed that at least 10 were killed in the bus explosion, bringing the total to 43 at least. 150 people have been seriously injured and many more have been taken to hospital. Tony Blair described the acts as barbaric and returned to London from the G8 summit at Gleneagles so that he could be fully briefed on what had happened and how the emergency services responded. In this special programme, we'll bring you an account of the events of the day, the latest information on casualties and travel disruption, and reaction from home and abroad. First, though, a summary of the day's news from Charlotte Green.
More than 40 people have been killed and hundreds more injured in a series of bomb explosions on the transport system in London. One blast, possibly caused by a suicide bomber, tore the roof off a double-decker bus in Woburn Place. The Home Secretary said there were at least 3 explosions on underground trains. The first bomb was on a tube train between Aldgate East and Liverpool Street shortly before 9 o'clock. The second on a train between Russell Square and King's Cross, and the third on a train at Edgware Road station. From there, John Brain reports.
The explosion at Edgware Road happened just before 9 o'clock this morning as one tube train was arriving at the station and another was leaving. The police have confirmed that a number of people were killed and several others seriously injured. Many passengers emerged covered in blood and clearly distraught. Some spoke of panic underground as people scrambled to get off the trains. All the casualties have now been brought to the surface. The walking wounded were treated at a nearby hotel, the more seriously injured taken to St Mary's Hospital. Specialist police officers have now gone underground to begin a criminal investigation.
Police have just said 21 people died in the King's Cross attack, 7 at Aldgate and 5 at Edgware Road. At least 10 people are believed to have died on the bus. The Queen has expressed her deep shock at the attacks and offered her sympathy to those affected. The Prime Minister has returned to London from Gleneagles, where he's been hosting the G8 summit. The conference is continuing in his absence. Mr Blair said the leaders were united in their resolve to confront and defeat the terrorists.
Our determination to defend our values and our way of life is greater than their determination to cause death and destruction to innocent people in a desire to impose extremism on the world.
The entire underground network will remain closed for the rest of the day. Bus services in central London are also suspended. Scotland Yard are advising the public to stay where they are for the time being and to avoid coming to London or trying to cross it.
Charlotte Green. That was Charlotte Green. A press conference began just before 3:30 at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre in London. It's being given jointly by all parts of the emergency services, among them Detective Chief Constable Andy Trotter of the Metropolitan Police, and he had this to say.
The situation is fluid. There are a number of bomb scares, as one can understand at a time like this. But we're doing our very best with Network Rail and the other operators to open up the systems as best we can. And we'd like Londoners to start thinking about their journey home and to make sure they check whether the services are available and then to start to make their way home. Obviously, we don't want a great rush out of central London, but it's going to be a very difficult evening to get people away. but I know that everyone was working together to try and get people home as best we can. So our encouragement is to check on those systems and then for people to start to make their way home.
Detective Chief Constable Andy Trotter, as I say, that press conference has only just begun and we'll have more details from it as the programme proceeds. We'll be on the air until 4 o'clock. The morning began with a period of confusion. First, there were reports of a collision on the Underground line at Liverpool Street, soon followed by further problems at other tube stations. And for a time, it seemed that a power surge might have been to blame. But then came news that a bus had been destroyed by an explosion at Tavistock Square, and the pattern of a coordinated assault on London in the space of less than an hour became clear. Becky Milligan reports on the morning's events.
Bob, can I just interrupt you for a second? Because I've just got some news coming in which I want to share with the listeners. Emergency services have been called to London's Liverpool Street station after reports of an explosion, according to British Transport Police.
Just after 9 this morning, ambulances, police and fire engines rushed to the scene of an explosion at Liverpool Street station. At first it was thought it could have been caused by a power surge or power cut, but it soon became clear that London had become the target of terrorists. The police were reporting that there'd been a series of blasts at underground stations. All stations were closed and bus services in central London were suspended. One man emerged from Russell Square tube station holding a bandage to a wound on the side of his head.
I heard a very loud bang, the lights went out and the carriage filled with smoke. I was in the front carriage and people were severely injured there. But I've heard, and I don't know if it's right, that people were even worse further back.
And this is inside Russell Square station, was it, or further up?
No, it was in the tunnel between King's Cross and Russell Square.
And how do you describe the reaction of people in the train to what happened?
Very mixed. Some people were very calm, others were very panicky.
Commuters had been trapped underground. It was a busy morning. Angelo Power, a barrister, gave this account of what happened on one of the trains after the explosion.
Everyone, it's kind of long story short, thought they were going to die. People started saying prayers, praying to God, panicking, breaking the carriage windows with their bare hands, anything to get oxygen into the carriage, because more people tried, the more distressed they became. Women passing out, people started getting very agitated. There was no communication from any drivers, everyone was in pitch black, then the emergency lights came on, and more smoke started coming into the carriage, and we were there for something like 20 to 30 minutes, during which the smoke intensified, the screaming intensified, the hysteria, and that's what it was. It became almost to a state of pandemonium. And then eventually somebody said that someone at the back of the carriage, because I was on the second to the back carriage, that had managed to force the door open, but they wouldn't get up because they thought they were going to be electrocuted by the live train lines. Then smoke was coming down the tunnel, so nobody would go out of that exit. No one would go out of the other exit because, as I understand it, there's a bomb in the middle of the carriage. So we were all trapped like sardines, waiting to die, and I honestly thought my time was up.
Another target of the terrorists was a bus near Tavistock Square, which was ripped apart by a blast. Karen and her son saw the explosion.
My son and I were heading to the Russell Square. We were going down to the underground to do the tube so we could see the changing of the guards. And we saw the bus actually go past us, the one that was blown up. Even eyeballed the people going, oh, how wonderful, they're going to get to go see Tour London. This is great. And we heard the explosion, turned around immediately and saw the bus just go straight up, the whole top of the bus, everything. There was metal, there was wood, there was everything just straight up in the air. We did not see any bodies. We did not. They got us off the street so fast after that. They got us around the corner and said there could be a secondary blast.
After a special cabinet meeting, the Home Secretary, Charles Clarke, gave a short statement outside number 10.
I chaired a meeting of our COBRA Senior Ministers Committee earlier on today to assess the situation and decide what immediate action needs to be taken. As far as the police are concerned, they are an operational command and dealing with the situation in accordance with very well-established procedures in an extremely professional way.
Charles Clark ending that report by Becky Milligan. The bus explosion took place outside the headquarters of the British Medical Association, and those inside the building reacted swiftly to the carnage on their doorstep, as I heard from Dr. Lawrence Buckman.
A bus blew up immediately by the front door of the British Medical Association at a time when there were lots of doctors inside at various meetings. So there were doctors on the scene within seconds, I would have thought. And certainly it was organised chaos. And then the ambulance crews arrived and the emergency services. They were on the scene very quickly. And we managed the dead and injured as best we could.
Have you any notion of the numbers of casualties on board the bus from your sighting of it?
Yes, 10 dead, some of whom didn't die immediately. 9 serious injuries and another 9 walking wounded.
This must have been a very violent explosion.
Amazingly so, yes. There's very little of the bus left. Some other vehicles are little bits of crushed metal. Some of the people who were injured, some of them quite seriously, were not even in the bus but were walking on the other side of the road. The front of the building is spattered with blood, although the building itself seems almost completely undamaged.
This is an extraordinary scene for the streets of London, and the coincidence of all of you being there. Were you able to save life, do you think, by being there on the spot?
Yes, I think so. There are certainly a few very grave casualties that we managed to stabilise here and to sort out sufficient for them to be moved to hospitals.
And we've been told that the emergency plans worked very quickly. Give me an idea, if you would, how quickly the ambulances were on the scene.
Minutes. I couldn't tell you how many minutes. Very, very quickly. The police, fire brigade and ambulance were here very, very quickly. Okay. There was a sort of agony. You've got to remember, in an emergency situation like this, minutes seem like hours, so it felt like forever before they turned up, but actually they were very quick.
Dr. Lawrence Buckman, and I'm joined in the studio by our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera. Gordon, at this press conference I mentioned earlier, the police have just said it's too early to say if suicide bombers or packages left on trains and buses caused the blast. What do you think about this?
Well, there had been a lot of speculation earlier in the day that particularly with the bus blast, that might have been caused by a suicide bomber. However, that's never been confirmed. Police and security sources have said that it could easily have been one or the other, a package left behind, perhaps detonated by a mobile phone, which was the model we saw in Madrid, or a suicide bomber, and it really is too early to tell. There are also reports that traces of explosives were found at the scene, and that might also be analysed as part of the forensic look to try and work out exactly what happened. But in a way, both techniques have been used by Al-Qaeda in the past, suicide bombings and packages detonated.
Is there any more, or do we know any more at all about these claims of responsibility which started to come in during the morning?
Well, there has been one on a website, particularly from a group that no one had heard of before, calling itself the base of Al-Qaeda in Europe, which went into a fair bit of detail about the attacks. Now, as I said, no one had heard of this group before, which doesn't mean either way that it is valid or not, and it's very difficult to authenticate anything which is simply posted to a website. You don't know where that comes from. But it does, I suppose, fit in with the sense that this is almost certainly an Al-Qaeda attack. All the signs point towards that in terms of the timing, the method. But those claims of responsibility, we can't really judge on them yet.
Gordon Carrera, thank you very much indeed. Tony Blair made it clear that he believed the London attacks had been timed to coincide with the G8 summit in Gleneagles. Before he left Scotland, he addressed the assembled journalists there, flanked by his fellow G8 leaders, the UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan, and representatives from China and Russia. The Prime Minister made a statement on behalf of them all.
We condemn utterly these barbaric attacks. We send our profound condolences to the victims and their families. All of our countries have suffered from the impact of terrorism. Those responsible have no respect for human life. We are united in our resolve to confront and defeat this terrorism that is not an attack on one nation, but on all nations and on civilized people everywhere.
Tony Blair speaking at Gleneagles before flying to London. Well, I'm joined from Winchester now by the former Home Office Minister and Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, John Denham. Mr. Blair clearly believes the G8 summit was the key to the timing of this. Do you agree with him?
It seems the most logical assumption. I don't think we can know until somebody stakes a claim to this and has the evidence to show that it was them and says that's the motive. But it's difficult to see of another reason why today, unless it was a random event, and that's not normally the way Al-Qaeda operates, if that's who it was.
And the other thing that we've been talking about today is that it does seem that there was a slight reduction in the level of threat under which all buildings and security personnel operate in London over recent weeks. Should that be a cause of concern, do you think?
I think it's far too early to say. These threat levels are a terribly difficult judgment made by the security services between the general level of threat, which I don't think has ever diminished, and any particular information which they may have. I think we could be fairly certain that nobody had any firm indications an attack like this was underway. Otherwise, I'm sure we would have heard more about it.
Britain has not suffered an attack like this, has it? A direct attack by terrorists in this fashion since the IRA and the real IRA. It will make people very nervous, won't it?
It will. I think that nothing's inevitable, but it was always very likely that this would happen, even after 9/11 and certainly after Madrid. And I think this sort of thing will occasionally be part of the pattern of our lives in Western Europe and the other Western countries I suspect, for the foreseeable future. So people will inevitably, all of us who work in London, who travel around London, who live in London, are going to feel nervous to some extent. On the other hand, I don't have any doubt that people's reaction overall will be just to get on with things as best they can.
From your own knowledge of the system, if you like, if you could tell me briefly, do you think that things went as well as could be hoped in these terrible circumstances today?
It's terribly difficult to say without real knowledge on the ground. The initial impression that I have, and that's purely based on the media, because I was one of many people who gave up for sensible reasons trying to get to central London today, is that things have gone according to plans. A huge amount of effort has gone into emergency planning, and they do, from the reports you've broadcast, seem to have worked. I'm sure when the dust settles there'll be things that didn't go quite according to plan that we can learn from. There won't ever have been an emergency when that wasn't true. But it does look as though the years of planning have probably paid off today.
John Denham, thank you. Well, at the joint insistence of all those involved, the G8 meeting continued this afternoon. It was clearly a statement of determination not to be thrown off course by terrorists. Mr. Blair is expected to rejoin the gathering later. But shortly after his departure for London, President Bush gave his reaction to the attacks.
You know, the contrast between what we've seen on the TV screens here, what's taking place in London, what's taking place here is incredibly vivid to me. On the one hand, you got people here who are working to alleviate poverty, to help rid the world of the pandemic of AIDS, ways to have a clean environment. And on the other hand, you got people killing innocent people. And the contrast couldn't be clearer.
George Bush. Another American politician, Rudolph Giuliani, who was mayor of New York at the time of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, is in London at the moment. And he spoke to the BBC about experiencing another terror attack on a major city.
My heart goes out to the people who were affected by this. It reminds me so much of September 11. And I feel very, very sorry for them, and I offer them all the support and help and assistance that we can give. I was at right near Liverpool Station when I think it was the first bomb that went off, and was notified of it. And it was just, to me, very, very eerie to be right there again when one of these attacks takes place. These are dastardly, cowardly acts, and the best way for us to react to them is to stand up to them and to do everything we can to support the people that were affected by it, but not let these terrorists affect our way of life.
Mayor Giuliani. The French Prime Minister has placed his country on a higher state of alert following this morning's attacks, while the European Union's Commissioner for Justice and Security Affairs, Franco Frattini, said that terrorism had once again hit the heart of Europe and hit a country that held the presidency of the European Union and the G8. I spoke to Mr. Frattini's spokesman, Frisco Roscom-Abing.
All of this seems to indicate that there was certainly a terrorist-planned, coordinated attack behind this. The Vice President, for him, this is confirmation, as what he said many times before, that terrorism isn't behind us. Unfortunately, with the attacks in Madrid, this is a continuous threat, not only to outside Europe, but to the Europe European Union on a whole as such. And he has offered his full assistance in any way whatsoever to the United Kingdom authorities.
It is Britain's presidency at the moment of the European Union. Lots of priorities have been mentioned to do with budgets and so on. But do you think that this will mean that security will become a much more urgent matter for Britain to try to develop policies on over the next 6 months?
Well, certainly I think this will be the case. I mean, we have seen this also following the tragic events on the 11th of March in Madrid. Since the 11th of September in the United States attacks, this issue was on top of the agenda of the European Union. Every single time the heads of state and government meet within their European Council framework, it is on the agenda. Following the Madrid attacks, now we are continuously updating an action plan on the fight against terrorism. But we know we still have to make progress, in particular in the sharing of intelligence between law enforcement, judicial authorities, intelligence authorities, and maybe we can now make more progress. It is very clear that we need to do this, that we need to work more together in order to, where possible, prevent such tragic things to happen.
Spokesman for the EU Commissioner Franco Frattini. Well, our diplomatic correspondent James Robbins is at Gleneagles. James, how will all this affect what's happening there?
There's a very powerful sense here, I think, among all the leaders that an attack on one is an attack on all. It will, of course, affect this summit profoundly, not least because the chairman, Tony Blair, has left for at least a few hours, but also because there's a sense of solidarity amongst them, which may even have an impact on the way they discuss the issues of climate change and tomorrow of Africa. But no, there was no question they were united in their resolve, and that's what they said precisely in their joint statement, to confront and defeat this terrorism. And I think we're going to see that continuing as the discussions goes on. But they've inevitably been disrupted by this. The talks that we expected to reach a conclusion on climate change today, whatever the outcome, I think we're not now going to know the outcome on climate change probably until tomorrow.
And as far as the longer-term implications of this are concerned, these things happen in countries, things are agreed between them. Are you expecting greater developments on this front?
If you're talking about terrorism, I mean, certainly this is an issue that G8 has discussed before, and I think there's absolutely no question that they went into this meeting, all of them, most of them have suffered directly in their own countries from attacks, and I think they will restate that very firmly in a declaration which probably wouldn't have said very much about global terrorism, but will certainly say a lot more now.
James Robbins, thank you. Well, Mr. Blair, as I've mentioned, is convinced that the attacks were designed to destabilise the summit, but they also come less than 24 hours after London was awarded the 2012 Olympic Games. The Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, was still in Singapore this morning, and just before flying home early, he condemned the attackers and praised the emergency services for their response. He also wanted to speak directly to those who were behind the attacks.
Finally, I wish to speak through you, directly, to those who came to London today to take life. I know that you personally do not fear to give your own life in exchange for taking others. It is why you are so dangerous. But I know you do fear that you may fail in your long-term objective to destroy our free society. And I can show you why you will fail. In the days that follow, look at our airports, look at our seaports, and look at our railway stations. And even after your cowardly attack, you will see that people from the rest of Britain, people from around the world, will arrive in London to become Londoners and to fulfil their dreams and achieve their potential. They choose to come to London, as so many have come before, because they come to be free, they come to live the life they choose, they come to be able to be themselves. They flee you because you tell them how they should live. They don't want that. And nothing you do, however many of us you kill, will stop that flight to our cities, where freedom is strong and where people can live in harmony with one another. Whatever you do, however many you kill, you will fail.
Ken Livingstone. We're joined on the line now by the Secretary-General of the Muslim Council of Britain, Sir Iqbal Sikrani. Sir Iqbal, what is your reflection on what's happened today?
Well, naturally, I mean, we along with all other sort of people of faith and no faith, we utterly condemn today's this indiscriminate acts of terror that have taken place in London. I mean, these evil deeds make victim of all of us. And I think it is our humanity that must bring us shoulder to shoulder to condemn, to oppose, and to ensure that we overcome those who want to spread this fear, hatred, and death.
Do you think there is a danger, a risk that this will lead to further community relation problems?
Well, there will be elements in the society, I think, who want to exploit this tragedy and try to create sort of commotion by spreading sort of hate mails to the message and putting in the blame to some section of the society. I think this would be a senseless act. And this is where I think one needs to be alert and we need to be calm at the same time, that we should not be provoked by such elements.
But how do you stop that happening? I mean, how, as the days go on, you can imagine, can't you, what's going to happen? There is going to be a great hue and cry, inevitably, after such awful acts have been committed. How do you prevent that spilling over in the way that you fear?
You see, the message that needs to come out is that these evil people who planned and carry out this series of explosions in London, their objective is to demoralize us as a nation and to divide us as a people. Now, all of us must unite in helping, first of all, the police to capture these murderers so that we identify who these culprits are. I mean, only yesterday we celebrated as Londoners this euphoric that our great city had secured the Olympic Games. And today we watch aghast as we witness this series of brutal attacks upon our capital city. Now, we were together in our celebrations, and we must remain together in our time of crisis so that no element can deliberately attempt to divide us and create that mischief that they want to do it.
And does this need to be stated in terms by those in authority?
I think this has to come out very clear. We have had very positive and very powerful statements coming out from faith leaders, from politicians as well. And I think the responsibility now lies with the media to get that message across. And I think once we are determined in that, then we will be able to identify these real culprits. Because what otherwise would happen is that we would be on tangent, we would be targeting or aiming for people who perhaps are innocent. This, what has really come out, is that all of us have been victims of it, people of all races and all faiths. And that is important for it to come out.
Sir Iqbal Sikrani, thanks for talking to us. Well, now, those at the Emergency Services press conference I mentioned earlier in the programme are still answering questions from journalists. One reporter from the Daily Telegraph asked if it was correct that the security level was lowered last month and was at its lowest level since 2001. This is what Assistant Commissioner Brown Paddock of the Metropolitan Police had to say in reply.
The security level was lowered slightly from the very highest, other than having specific information about a specific target. It is at its second highest level, and we felt that that was appropriate in all the circumstances, bearing in mind all the intelligence that we were in possession of.
And in answer to another question, he added that to his knowledge there had been no warnings given to the police or to the security services in advance of any of this morning's attacks. Well, I've been joined in the studio now by our correspondent, Jane Draper. Jane, you've been following through the day, drawing together information from hospitals and elsewhere about casualties, and this press conference has given us a lot more information, hasn't it?
That's right. We now know that 33 people have died in 3 different explosions on the Tube network. That includes 21 people who died on the Tube between King's Cross and Russell Square, 5 at Edgware Road and 7 at Liverpool Street. In addition to that, a number of people died on the bus at Upper Woburn Square. There aren't confirmed numbers of the dead there, but earlier we did hear from Dr. Lawrence Buckman, Deputy Chairman of the BMA, who dashed from his headquarters, and he told us that 10 people died there. In addition to that, 45 who are serious or critically injured and 300 people with minor injuries.
Jane Draper, thank you very much indeed. I can tell you that the London police at this press conference have said the public should remain vigilant, and the quote is, "We do not know if this is over yet." But it brings us to the end of this BBC News special. As we've been reporting, the police say that at least 33 people are known to have been killed in 4 bomb attacks in London this morning, several more, as you've heard, after an explosion on a bus. And there'll be much more about what's happened today on PM at 5 o'clock.
Studio production was by Amanda Lewis and the editor was Colin Handcock. And there'll be a specially extended hour-long edition of the 6 o'clock news this evening. In the meantime, we continue with our scheduled programmes, and in a couple of minutes, Dr. Oliver Sacks will be talking about his best-selling book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat.